The sun over New Mexico had never felt so mean. It sat heavy in the sky, boiling the sand and scraping heat across the flat nothingness like a blade. A yellow bus rattled down Highway 45, its paint sun-faded and chipped, tires kicking up pale clouds of dust behind it. The side still bore the peeling name, San Luis Field Academy, and the letters danced in the heat mirage like a cruel joke. Inside, 32 children sat scattered in their usual cliques, loud in the back, tired in the middle, the rule followers up front. The bus groaned and shook as if even it was too tired to keep going. The kids had just finished a 3-day school trip exploring old mines and desert wildlife. Their energy had long been spent under sunburns, blisters, and the long drive home. The bus smelled like sweat, peanut butter crackers, and whatever had died in someone's backpack. In the driver's seat sat Mr. Hollis, former Marine, quiet-eyed and broad-shouldered. 62, thick-knuckled hands gripping the wheel with a kind of reverence. He had scars from a war none of the kids knew how to pronounce, but what they did know was that he was never late, never shouted, and always had a spare bottle of water hidden for whoever asked politely. Behind him, Lainey Brewster, 13, sat with her knees pressed against the seat in front of her. She was the kind of kid who asked too many questions and never smiled without a reason. Next to her was Judd, stocky and sunburned, making paper footballs out of worksheets. A few rows back, twins Macy and Maud hummed a camp song off-key. The youngest on board, little Finn Raleigh, age 5, had fallen asleep clutching a blue lunchbox with a broken handle. No one knew what was in it anymore, but he wouldn't let it go. 2 hours tops, Mr. Hollis muttered to himself, eyes on the endless road. Then we're home. But that was before the road turned to silence. Just past mile marker 84, the bus dipped into a basin, lowlands between red rock ridges. To the left, a hill with scraggly brush. To the right, dust and sky. As the bus rolled into the curve, Hollis tapped the brake. Up ahead, a white sign leaned crooked in the wind. Road closed, Dieter. Handwritten in red paint on plywood. Orange cones flanked the path like toy soldiers. Beyond them, 2 men in high-vis vests waved for the bus to slow down. One held a clipboard. The other wore a hard hat too big for his head. Hollis squinted. No construction had been scheduled out here. He always checked. Still, he slowed. Pulled up close. The kids began to stir, stretching, whispering, smacking dried fruit wrappers and candy bags against seats. One boy, Clayton, stood to see better through the dusty windows. The man with the clipboard stepped up to Hollis's side of the bus. Afternoon, he said, voice flat. Oil spilled down ahead. Need you to reroute? Take the service path off the right. Dirt road, but it'll link you back in about 6 miles. Hollis furrowed his brow. The man avoided eye contact. That's so? He asked, gaze drifting past him. Behind the cones, a dark utility truck sat idling, dust swirling around its tires. There were no oil drums. No crews. No sign of hazard cleanup. Then he saw it. Movement by the passenger door. A third man, crouching low, slipping from behind a rusted barrel with something long in his hand. A shotgun. Hollis opened his mouth, but it was already too late. The worker, beside his window, dropped the clipboard, reached inside his vest, and pulled a revolver. Open the doors, he said calmly. Now. Gasps broke out behind him. Some kids thought it was a prank. Others froze, wide-eyed. What's happening? Lainey asked, standing up. Judd tugged her sleeve, shaking his head. Finn stirred in his sleep, eyes fluttering open. Hollis stared at the barrel of the revolver, then at the reflection of children in his mirror. His hand hovered over the gear shift. Fight or flee. Don't do anything stupid, the man hissed. The door hissed open. The smell of sand and oil crept in. 2 more men rushed up the steps, masks pulled tight over their faces. One had a duffel bag. The other swept his weapon across the seats. Everyone down! On the floor! Hands where we can see 'em! The taller one yelled. Screams. Real ones now. Maud dropped to her knees, clutching her sister. Laney shielded Finn, whispering, "Stay down, buddy. It's gonna be okay." Judd shoved two smaller boys under the seat. Clayton tried to run, but the masked man cracked him across the shoulder with the gun's butt. He dropped hard, groaning. Mr. Hollis was yanked from his seat and shoved into the aisle. He tried to speak, to plead, but a fist caught him in the gut and dropped him beside the front row. The men worked with terrifying precision. Zip ties. Blindfolds. Barked orders. 32 children, some sobbing, some too shocked to move, were bound and pulled one by one from the bus. The youngest were carried like sacks. The oldest forced at gunpoint. The sun boiled overhead. No one came. The desert kept its secrets. The bus sat alone on the side of the road, engine ticking softly as it cooled in the wind. Its door hung half open. One of the back windows was cracked where a child had tried to resist. On the dust-caked side, the name, San Luis, slowly faded in the light. A single shoe lay in the aisle. Nearby, tire tracks led off-road and vanished into nothing. And the desert swallowed it all without a sound. The inside of the truck was dark, hotter than the bus had ever been. It smelled like old gasoline, dried blood, and something rotten. The floor was metal, sharp-edged and ribbed, jarring every bone as the vehicle bounced along a dirt path that twisted into the unknown. The children were piled together, a tangled mess of knees and elbows and muffled sobs. The taller boys tried to shield the little ones, but there were too many. Some kids were crying openly. Others just stared ahead, eyes glassy and stunned. One of the masked men sat near the back with a shotgun across his lap. The other two rode up front, voices muffled behind the cab wall. Laney's wrists burned from the plastic ties, and her cheek was already scraped from where she'd hit the floor of the bus. Her mind raced, but her body felt frozen. Finn was slumped beside her, mouth dry and trembling, holding his lunchbox to his chest like a sacred thing. Every few seconds he whispered his dog's name. Over and over. Bruno! 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 The truck hit a pothole and someone shrieked. A girl, Lorna, threw up between her knees. The smell spread instantly. Judd, pinned between two crying third-graders, tried not to gag. "What do they want?" someone whispered. "Shut up," the man with the shotgun barked. Not another sound. But sound was all there was. Breathing, crying, the groan of the metal truck frame. Laney pressed her forehead to the floor and prayed to stay conscious. Time dissolved. Minutes, maybe hours passed. The heat pressed down like a living thing. One child fainted. Another wet himself. Then the truck slowed. Everything stopped. A second later, the rear doors yanked open, and the blinding white of desert sun poured in like an explosion. Children screamed, shielding their eyes. Two more masked men stood outside. One pointed toward a concrete opening hidden behind a ridge of broken hills. A doorway sunk into the earth. "Move!" the man growled. "No, no! Where are you taking us?" shouted someone near the back. A blow silenced them. Mr. Hollis, bruised and bleeding from a cut on his temple, was dragged to the front. "You," the tallest man said. "You help carry the little ones. We don't want them falling." The entrance looked like nothing. A metal door rusted from the hinges. It opened with a groan. Behind it, a tunnel. Dirt walls reinforced with plywood and rusted metal beams. The floor was layered with plastic and wood planks. Laney was one of the first shoved through. The air inside the tunnel was cooler but stank of mildew, rot, and dust. She stumbled forward and caught herself on a wall. Behind her, the line of children shuffled in, one by one, breathing in panic and dirt. At the end of the tunnel was a larger space. Low ceiling. No windows. Just a square box buried under God knew how much earth. A room built like a shipping container but sunken into the ground. Two small pipes stuck through the top, air vents, barely wide enough to fit a baseball. Inside were old crates, hay-stuffed mats, and a few dusty jugs of water. The kidnappers barked orders. Children were forced to sit. One boy, Reese, tried to run. He got 3 steps before being yanked by his collar and thrown into the plywood wall so hard it cracked. "No heroes," the man hissed. They were trapped. The door slammed. A bolt slid into place. Then another. And another. Darkness. Not the kind you get when lights go off at night. This was full, solid dark, the kind that crushes you, crawls into your mouth and ears. Someone whimpered. Then someone screamed. Mr. Hollis's voice boomed in the dark. "Everyone sit down! Don't panic!" Laney reached for Finn. Found his hand, sticky and shaking. He clung to her like she was his last thread. "There's no light," someone sobbed. "There's no window. We're gonna die." "Shut up!" Judd barked. "No one's dying! Just shut up and let Mr. Hollis talk." The silence was jagged after that. One by one, the sounds returned, panting, quiet weeping, the shuffle of shoes on plywood. Hollis spoke again, voice gentler this time. "We're going to stay calm. First thing, count. I need a head count. Who's here?" "I am," whispered Laney. "Me too," said Judd. "Charlotte. Benny. Emma." The list went on. A murmur of names through the dark. Some shaky. Some whispered. Others too afraid to speak. 32. Still all accounted for. Mr. Hollis breathed slow. "We stay close. We save water. We take care of the smallest first." He groped through the dark toward a crate and found one of the water jugs. Sloshing. "Tiny sips only," he warned. "We don't know how long we'll be down here." Laney's voice trembled but stayed firm. "We should make a list. Someone has to keep track." "In the dark?" said a boy sarcastically. "Then we remember." She shot back. Silence again. Then someone coughed. A dry, sharp bark that echoed too loud. The darkness was still complete, but now it felt crowded, alive, like it breathed with them. And above, faintly, the scrape of shovels. They were being buried. Alive. The first hour passed in chaos. Then silence, so heavy it crushed against the chest. No light, no breeze. The heat no longer came from the desert sun, but from the collective panic and tightly packed bodies. Breath thickened the air, sour with sweat and fear. Somewhere in the dark, a child whispered the same line over and over. "It's not real, it's not real," until her voice cracked. Mr. Hollis had stationed himself near the door. Not that it mattered. The door didn't budge, not even when he threw his shoulder into it. "Bolted from the outside," he muttered. "Reinforced." He didn't say what he was really thinking, buried. They had been sealed in. Laney held Finn in her lap, rocking slowly. The boy's lips were dry, but his fingers gripped her sleeve with a quiet terror. He hadn't cried since they were thrown into the box. He just shook. Every few minutes he whispered, "Home," to no one. Judd crawled toward where Mr. Hollis's voice had last come from. "Sir," he said quietly, "I found something." "What is it?" "Back wall. There's an edge." Together they moved along the wall, hands brushing over the rough plywood. Laney followed, guiding the smaller kids around crates and sleeping bodies. Near the corner, Judd pressed his palm to the surface. "A seam. It's hollow behind this," he said. Laney pressed her ear to it. "I can feel air. Just a little." Her heart pounded. "We need something to dig with." The kids began to crawl, feeling blindly, hands sifting through the crates and scattered debris. A rusted metal fork. A broken broomstick. 2 empty water bottles. Useless, almost, but something. Laney handed the fork to Judd. "Dig soft. Don't bring the roof down. We're already under it," he said. They worked in silence, scraping wood fibers, peeling layers of old nails and damp rot. Each splinter that came loose let in a thread of cooler air, faint, dusty, but real. At some point, Charlotte whispered, "Reese isn't answering." They found him curled between a crate and the far wall, unmoving. "Reese?" Mr. Hollis reached out, felt for a pulse. "He's breathing." "Fainted?" No. Just hiding inside himself, Lainey said. She knew the look. Eyes open but far away. He needs light. He needs noise. Something normal. Charlotte began humming a tune, off-key, broken. Someone else joined in. It was a lullaby, one they'd sung on the first night of the field trip, under the stars by the campfire. The sound was awful. But it was something. Lainey turned back to the wall. We can't wait here. This isn't a hiding place. It's a coffin. You think we can get out? Judd asked. I don't know. But I'd rather try than rot. They took turns digging. The fork snapped after an hour, leaving only their fingers. Nails cracked. Knuckles bled. Every push made the air better, but also loose dirt from above. The container groaned sometimes, metal warping. They paused after each creak, breath caught in throats, waiting to be buried for good. Mr. Hollis checked the vent pipes, 2 narrow tubes extending through the roof. They carried air, yes, but barely. One rattled loose when he tapped it. If we break this, we lose what little airflow we've got. But if we open the back wall, Lainey said, we make a new way. It's a gamble either way. There was no vote. They just kept digging. Somewhere in the corner, Macy whispered to her twin sister, when Mom gets us, can we sleep in her bed? We can sleep in the bathtub if we make it out. We will, Macy whispered, but her voice broke at the end. Water was low. They passed the last jug, drops doled out in silence. Judd sucked the inside of the cap like it might trick his body into hope. Then, as if called by a ghost, little Finn sat up suddenly. I hear something. The digging stopped. Everyone froze. Where? Lainey asked. He pointed at the far wall. No direction really, just space. Not the men, he said. Someone else. Quiet feet. Lainey crawled to the back. She pressed her ear to the plywood. At first, nothing. Then, faint, a vibration. Movement. She gasped. It's above us. The children crowded near, holding one another. Even Reese blinked slowly. Help, Judd whispered, voice shaking. Please help. They began to shout. First one voice. Then 2. Then 10. Pounding fists, feet, screams that shredded throats and bruised knuckles. But the earth was greedy. Nothing answered. Charlotte fell to her knees and cried into her hands. Lainey went back to the digging. We are not done, she whispered. Then she felt it. A piece of wood gave way. A tiny draft swept in, cooler, cleaner. She put her face to it and inhaled like it was life itself. There's something back here, she cried. It's hollow. Judd reached beside her, pulling more splinters free. The kids passed debris behind them like miners, forming a chain. And slowly, inch by inch, the hole widened. It wasn't much. But it was something. Not freedom. But direction. Lainey's arms were numb. Her fingers bled at the tips, but she didn't stop digging. The edge of the wall had given way to a pocket of earth, soft and dry, where the plywood had rotted from moisture and pressure. Each handful of dirt she pulled out came with a quiet whisper of cool air, like the desert itself was breathing back into them. Judd was beside her, covered in grime, his shirt soaked with sweat. He no longer spoke. Just clawed. They had widened the hole enough for a pair of arms to reach in. But that wasn't enough. It had to be wide enough for a child. Then 2. Then 32. Behind them, the rest of the group sat in circles, pressed against each other like orphaned animals. Mr. Hollis moved slowly, touching heads, whispering names like prayers. Finn was asleep with his mouth open, pale and twitching. Charlotte hadn't spoken in 2 hours. Reese had curled into the corner again, humming some tune only he knew. The air vents were giving less now. The container groaned with the weight of the world above them. They're going to bury us, someone said. No, Hollis replied, his voice hoarse. They already did. Angela, 10 years old, small for her age, suddenly burst into tears. Her nose bled from the heat. She wiped it with her forearm and didn't even flinch. I don't want to die in here. You won't, Lainey rasped, still digging. Not if we keep going. I'm scared. We all are. Angela didn't say another word, but she crawled forward anyway and started digging with both hands. Her small fingers moved the dirt faster than Lainey thought possible. When Lainey tried to pull her back, Angela shook her head. Let me help. Then Maud and Macy joined in. Then Judd again. Then 3 more. It became rhythm. Scrape, pass. Scrape, pass. The hole widened to the size of a crate. And then it happened. A flood of loose dirt came rushing in, choking the space. Angela screamed. The whole wall groaned like a beast. Judd dove backward, coughing. Hollis yelled for everyone to move away. But the ceiling held. Barely. Lainey, eyes watering, wiped the dirt from Angela's face. Are you okay? Angela nodded. Keep going. They dug slower now. Cautious. Every shift of dirt sent a tremble through the walls. At one point, the air thinned so badly that someone fainted again. A girl named Theta collapsed mid-breath. Hollis fanned her with his shirt, his own hands trembling. When water ran out, no one complained. They just pressed their lips to the inside of the jug cap and imagined relief. At last, Judd reached into the gap and felt metal. Something flat and wide. Guys, he whispered. This is it. A roof maybe, or a hatch. Lainey crawled over, her whole body screaming in exhaustion. She felt it. Steel. Smooth, hot. They passed up the last flashlight, barely flickering, and saw the faint outline of a metal panel, wedged at an angle, probably rusted shut. Mr. Hollis was called forward. He laid both hands on the panel. I need help, he said. Judd pushed up beside him. On 3? On 3. 1, 2, 3. They shoved upward. The metal groaned. Moved a half-inch. Then dropped again. Dust rained down like ash. Someone started coughing again. They tried again. And again. And again. Each push brought them a sliver of light, a shift in air, and a deeper dread that the next shove might collapse the roof above entirely. But they kept going. Every muscle ached. Hollis's shoulder popped. Judd coughed blood. Lainey's fingernails peeled back. But they didn't stop. And then it happened. With one last, grunting, desperate heave, the panel screamed open. Light poured in. Not sunlight. Not yet. But gray light. Dust-filtered sky. They had reached the surface. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Everyone stared into that pale circle like it was the face of God. Then a cry came from behind. Lisa, one of the youngest, whispering. Is that the outside? Lainey didn't answer. She shoved her hands upward, scraping her elbows against the rim, pulling herself through dry, choking earth. The sun hit her skin like fire. She cried out, not in pain, but disbelief. Above her was nothing. Just open land. Distant hills. A world they'd only imagined was still turning. She gasped for air. Help me get the others. She choked. Mr. Hollis lifted Angela next, pushing her gently through the hole. Then Lisa. Then Judd. One by one, the kids were passed upward, weak and blinking, arms outstretched to whoever was already standing on the surface. When Hollis finally climbed out, his knees buckled. They were out. All 32. The breeze was dry and sharp, but it was air. Real air. They stood in a gravel pit, surrounded by scrub brush and silence. The desert stretched in every direction. The sky burned with noon sun. No kidnappers. No shovels. Just heat. And silence. Charlotte collapsed to her knees and kissed the ground. Finn fell asleep in Lainey's lap, the lunchbox still clutched in his hands. Judd pointed toward a ridge. There's a road. Maybe a mile. No one moved. They just stared upward, stunned. The desert had held them. But now, they had escaped it. And in darkness like this, that was enough. The desert didn't care that they were free. It baked the ground without pause, burned every exposed shoulder, and offered no comfort beyond wind and silence. The children, all 32 of them, stood in the gravel pit like ghosts, skins smudged with dirt, eyes hollow, movements uncertain. For a long while, no one spoke. They just existed, breathing in air that was too dry, too wide, too unfamiliar after so long underground. Lainey stared up at the sky. It looked fake. A canvas painted in cruel blue. She squinted, trying to believe it was real. Beside her, Finn curled in the shade of Mr. Hollis's body, the lunchbox still pressed against his stomach. He hadn't said a word since being lifted from the hole. His silence scared her more than anything. "We have to move," Hollis finally rasped. His voice cracked from thirst and dust. "Sun's too high. We'll cook if we stay out here." "Which way?" Judd asked. Hollis pointed to the east, where a faint line in the dirt hinted at tire tracks. "Looks like a service road. Maybe leads to a rig or station." "Or nothing," Maud muttered. "Still better than sitting here," Hollis said. So they began to walk. Not like a parade. Not like children returning from a field trip. More like survivors. Shuffling, barefoot or blistered in torn sneakers, sunburned and silent. Some leaned on each other. Some dragged blankets. One girl walked with a crate lid as a makeshift sunshade over her head. Judd held Charlotte's hand when she nearly passed out, whispering, "Just a little more." Lainey carried Finn. He didn't weigh much, but her legs ached with every step. The world was too big now. Too bright. Too loud with wind. Then a sound broke through. Distant. Mechanical. Rumbling. They froze. Dust kicked up behind the ridge. Two heads appeared above the slope. Hard hats, truck mirrors, the slow rumble of an old oil field pickup. The workers saw them and hit the brakes so hard the vehicle skidded sideways. Doors flew open. One man stumbled out, mouth hanging open. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "You kids. We need water," Hollis croaked. The man fumbled for his canteen, ran forward. The second worker ran to the truck radio, already screaming for dispatch. Within 20 minutes, sirens screamed across the plains. Red and blue lights shimmered against sand. EMTs leapt from vans with kits, water stretchers. The children didn't run to them. They didn't cry. They just let themselves be touched, checked, wrapped in blankets. Some flinched. Others stared off into space as saline dripped into their arms. Lainey sat on the ground, watching Finn slowly sip from a paper cup. His eyes still hadn't focused on anything. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The paramedic beside her asked gently, "How many?" 32, she said. "Including Mr. Hollis. Anyone missing?" "No." Her voice broke. "We didn't leave anyone." Hours later, they were in the hospital. Chowchilla had been the story in '76. But now, in July 1987, the town of Gallows Creek had its own headline. 32 children escape underground imprisonment in remote desert. News vans circled the ER entrance. Reporters clawed for statements, cameras flashed behind glass. Parents began to arrive, some driven in from hours away, some flown in by local law enforcement. The screams of reunions echoed through the hospital hallways. One mother fainted when she saw her son alive. Another dropped to her knees. Fathers wept without shame. Lainey watched them all, sitting by the vending machine, holding Finn's lunchbox like it was a holy thing. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Judd sat beside her. His hands were wrapped, lips cracked, eyes swollen. "Do you think we'll forget?" he asked. "No. I don't want to." Lainey finally looked at him. "Why?" "Because if we forget, it'll feel like it didn't happen. And we earned this." "Surviving." Lainey nodded. But her voice was distant when she answered. "I think part of us is still down there." The FBI came next. Sharp suits, quick questions, endless photos. The children were asked to describe their kidnappers, what they wore, what they sounded like. Most couldn't remember. Some remembered too much. Mr. Hollis repeated his statement a dozen times. 3 men. Fake construction setup. Blue truck. 1 revolver. 1 shotgun. Southern accent. No license plate I could see. The kids backed him up. A few even drew pictures. Within days, agents raided a motel 120 miles south. The truck had been torched in the desert. But 1 duffel bag remained. Inside, blueprints, maps, a handwritten list of names. Some of them were the children. The kidnappers were never caught. They vanished, into Mexico, some guessed. Or deeper. But the children of San Luis Field Academy returned to their homes. To their streets and beds and bathtubs and dinners that now felt alien. Some refused to sleep without the lights on. Some couldn't be touched for weeks. Finn began to scream whenever a door closed. Charlotte spent hours drawing circles. Judd cut his nails down to the skin, afraid of what lived under dirt. And Lainey? She wouldn't speak to reporters. Not once. She wrote everything down. Hundreds of pages. And then never showed anyone. Every July 19th, one of the survivors returned to that gravel pit. Left behind a ring of 32 white stones, like petals in the dirt. Some years, it was Hollis. Some years, it was Maud or Judd. But the circle was always there. A few of the children moved far away. Changed their names. Others stayed in Gallows Creek. They grew up. Had children. Found jobs. But the silence between them always hummed with what had once been buried. Mr. Hollis passed away 10 years later. The funeral was small, but all 32 children came. They sat in the front pew, older now than he had been when he saved them. Lainey stood and said nothing. Just left the lunchbox on his casket. Closed. Untouched. Full of dust, and memory, and everything they'd carried out of the dark.